and it's a really, really great space. And we had loads of kids come in, and they kept asking for the slide over and over. So I finally just started a petition, and I have around 30 signatures. But I really am pleading for you to give the pool as much money as you possibly can. We need a new volleyball net. We need new lane lines. There's a lot of upkeep needs to be done. And of course, the splash pad doesn't work. All these things need to be fixed for it to actually be a functional pool, especially for kids, because I taught my son how to swim there. So it's an important place to me, and I just want to make sure that you guys can give as much money to that as you can. And what did you want me to do with these signatures?
You can give it to Jennifer. She's over there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who wishes to come forward and speak? All right, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close citizen comments. It is now closed. Next up, agenda item number 1, approval of a resolution of the City of Kyle, Texas, authorizing the grant award of $45,000 for the term ending September 1st, 2021 to August 31st, 2022 from the Office of the Governor, Victim Coordinator and Liaison Grant Program to fund a full-time victim services advocate at Kyle Police Department and to include city matched funds of $18,616. Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. For the record, Jeff Barnett, Chief of Police. So we have good news to share. Last year, during our budget process in the early months, the council encouraged us to seek a grant to fund an additional crime victims employee that could help serve the victims of our community. And our Victim Services Coordinator, Kelly, did a lot of work in researching grants to find one that would provide us funds to bring that additional staff member on board. You gave us permission several months ago to apply to the state for that grant, and as typical, we normally get the notice in August, so we apologize, but we just received notice that we have been awarded the $45,000 grant for the Victim Services employee, and we would like to get them started. It is I did mention when we applied, or when we sought your permission to apply, that we were seeking a 2-year grant, which is customary. They will award 2-year grants. However, they only awarded a 1-year grant. I'm going to assume that's probably because of COVID and budgeting, and they're making sure they don't overextend themselves into multi-year grants at this time. So we're asking permission to accept a 1-year grant for our Victim Services Liaison position at the numbers that you stated.
Thank you, Chief. Anyone have any questions or comments?
Mayor.
Councilmember Flores-Kale.
So we sought your permission, council approved permission, and Kelly was our lead person on that grant in finding it and then also helping us apply for it once we had your permission, yes. She did an outstanding job at that. Absolutely. She is here in the audience. Should you have any questions? Yes.
Councilmember Ellison.
Yes, I appreciate Kelly and Chief and everyone who was a part of getting this going. This was something that we did talk about last year's budget on improving and adding this position and going for the grant opportunity first. So I appreciate staff's work on this. I'd like to make the motion to approve.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Ellison, seconded by Councilmember Flores-Kale. Is there any further comments? I have a question. Just how is it in the budget for this upcoming budget? How is it set up?
Yes, thank you for that reminding me. So I would ask, and I may defer to Pervez here to get the right wording, but I do know that when we address the budget in subsequent items on the agenda, that we'll need to make these changes before you make your final passage. Pervez can probably help me with the wording on that, but he did.
Yeah, Mayor, we'll need a budget amendment from council.
So it's not a current FTE in the budget?
No, sir.
Okay. So the requested amendment will be for $18,000?
The amendment will be 3-part, Mayor. It will be to increase the grant revenue by $45,000, add an additional full-time equivalent position in PD's budget, and add $18,616.88 to PD's budget from the general fund ending balance.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, next up, we have two public hearings on the budget and tax rate. The first, conduct a public hearing on the city's proposed budget. Pervez, which one do I have to read this on?
The
tax rate,
second
right?
one.
Okay. For fiscal year 2021, 2022, as amended by City Council, totaling approximately $172.6 million for all city funds, including a tax rate of 0.5082 per $100 assessed valuation, a 6% increase in water services rates, no change in wastewater services rates, no change in storm drainage fees, a 2.51% increase in solid waste services service charges, trash collection per contract terms, all other fees and charges for city services as provided for in the fee schedule, capital improvement program expenditures, and the addition of 23 new full-time positions for a total of 304 full-time equivalent positions. So with that, the public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who would like to come forward and speak on the budget? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. It is now closed. Next up, agenda item number 3. This is the public hearing to obtain comments on the proposal to set the city's ad valorem tax rate at 0.5082 per 100. And I have an item that I have to read out. So I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing, and then I'm going to read this out. This is the mayor's announcement after opening public hearing on tax rates. This is the second of 2 public hearings on the city's ad valorem tax rates for tax year 2021, fiscal year 2021-2022. The first public hearing was held at 7 p.m. on August 17th, 2021 at Kyle City Hall, 100 West Center Street, Kyle, Texas 78640. The city's ad valorem tax rates for the year 2021 are as follows. No new revenue tax rate, 0.4977 per $100. Voter approval tax rate, 0.5083 per $100. Proposed tax rate, 0.5802 per $100. The proposed ad valorem tax rate of 0.5082 is a 0.0119 or 2.3% below the city's current adopted rate of 0.5201 per $100. On August 17th, 2021, the Kyle City Council approved on first reading the property tax rate ordinance for the tax year 2021. At this meeting today, the City Council will consider on second and final reading of property tax rate ordinance to set the ad valorem tax rate at 0.5082 per $100 of assessed taxable valuation for tax year 2021. Public notices were published in the Hayes Free Press newspaper to inform and invite all Kyle taxpayers, residents, and members of the public to attend the public hearings and express their views to City Council on the city's proposed property tax rates. Okay, with that, the public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who would like to come forward and speak on the city's tax rate? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. It is now closed. All right, next up, consider impossible action, second reading. Approve an ordinance of the City of Kyle, Texas, adopting a budget totaling $172.6 million for all city funds, as I outlined earlier in this agenda. Mr. Sellers.
Mayor, Council, Scott Sellers for the record. Items 4 and 5, I can just speak to very briefly. There's really not much change other than what you already approved earlier tonight. So what we have before you are the changes made at the budget workshop number 4. As well as the proposed amendment from the earlier item tonight, the tax rate being set on the agenda, and really we have no other comments here to answer any questions you may have about the budget.
All right, thanks, Scott. Is there anyone who has anything they want to bring forward? Councilmember Flores-Kale.
All right, thank you. I have a few questions and concerns regarding the lobbyist. So first of all, I'd like to see a breakdown for the lobbyist on 2 separate line items in the budget, one for state and one for federal. So with that, I would like to make a motion to break down into 2 line items and provide the cost for each separate lobbyist.
Second.
It's been motioned by Councilmember Flores-Kale, seconded by Councilmember Ellison. Sorry, it's been motioned by Councilmember Flores Kale, seconded by Councilmember Ellison, that we break down the proposed lobbyist budget into two funds, one allocated for federal and one allocated for state. Is there any discussion on the motion? Sorry, I'm just thinking about it. Second reading of the budget. If you bring up something, I'm going to think about it for a second.
It's what we do. We ask and we think.
This is simply just making them separate line items. It's not changing any dollar amounts. It's not doing anything other than just showing them as two separate itemized amounts in our budget, correct?
Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with it. I'm just trying to think it through. That's all.
Is there something I can help you? Like, do you have questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay, just here to help.
Yeah. Does anybody have any thoughts? You know, I don't know about the way the contracts would be termed, so I don't know exactly what that might look like. But Scott, do you have feedback on that?
We do plan on bringing forward a contract at the September 7th City Council meeting for the federal lobbyist. We have not begun the process of soliciting a state lobbyist.
Okay. Councilmember Tobias.
Yes, thank you. I think what we're asking for is just not only just a breakdown of the dollar amount for the state and federal, but maybe a description as also possibly of what they will be doing for the city, a form of directive from the state and the federal on that end. I guess if we're bringing it forward, like you said, in September, it would just be helpful to be able to see everything that we're going to be using the money for on that end. And just a breakdown of what the state is. If we hire somebody that's going to go to the state, what's going to be their primary duties? What would be the total cost that we would have versus the federal? And that's kind of how I'm looking at it, sir. Thank you.
So I understand the request. I think that that's something that we have to have, but we don't get that until we bring forward proposals. This is budgetary, and so we've yet to even look at or consider one. So, I mean, we could allocate it one way or another. I suppose that doesn't matter, but we haven't even yet voted on the first of the contracts. So I'm not really sure what y'all want to do, other if you want to just go ahead and split it on the lines of what the proposal that is coming, if that's the mentality, or what, because this is a budgeting meeting.
Mayor?
Councilmember Ellison.
Yes, I guess that's why I was just trying to get clarification on the reason for kind of making the different line items. I mean, I guess you and I agree on this, that we haven't done those aspects, but I would, as y'all would probably understand from me stating this before, I would say that I think it would have been wise of us to have done that even before we got into allocating $300,000 of our budget for next year into that, is having those descriptions, having an idea of exactly what we're allocating these funds for. Because, I mean, if 4 of us vote for this tonight, I mean, it's in the budget, it's approved. So September 7th is after that, of course. But this, I think that would have kind of helped alleviate kind of what's going on right now and kind of asking these questions about what it's going to do. But we're putting the funding already approved for that. So I personally would have liked to have seen this presentation and had the outline and the proposals of what these firms could do even before we got to this point. But It's where we are now.
Councilman Flores Kale.
So yeah, that is my concern, is how do we plan on budgeting for a state lobbyist without a proposal? I know we have a proposal for a federal, so if we want to take that amount and subtract it from the 300,000, then that'll give us a better idea of where we're going to allot the money for this, or how much we're going to allot for the state.
So you're saying you want to divide them up by an item that council has yet to vote on?
So this item, this proposal actually has your name in it, and so you are very much aware of this proposal and how much it's going to cost. So I guess I'm kind of confused, as I thought this was, we haven't voted on it, but you're aware of it.
Yeah, I'm aware of it. I'm aware of a
So then you're
proposal that's
aware of
coming.
the cost, how much we should budget.
Okay.
Perez, can you give us those two separate amounts too?
You're gonna need to change the budget. It has to be an exact amount. That's fine.
I can give him the fee proposal. I have it with me, if you want to look at that, and that we can allot that for federal. Or we can vote on it.
So as we speak, the budget has one line item for $300,000. So if your motion is to separate the two, I was asking Scott if we have the dollar amount for the federal.
I do. Unless, that's the proposal that we're using. So I guess I don't understand how we're making any budget without using those stuff that we've previously seen.
Right, so
We don't
I think
have any
that's
idea.
actually the kind of the underlying question that we're asking is we're budgeting for an item that we don't exactly know how much it will cost, which is
So
very.
should we be budgeting for that? What
It's
if
how
it's
we
more?
do, it's how we do our budgeting. So we have many items in the budget that we don't know exactly how much it will cost, but we put an item based on some known metric. Sometimes it's fully engineered reports, sometimes it's FTEs, sometimes it's,
So what would we use for state?
all right. If you have to allow me to explain my line of thinking, or we can do, I don't really care. It's kind of we can just change it if you want, but to try to act like we're somehow budgeting differently on this particular item than we are with our entire budget is
I'm
not
not, I
correct.
just asked for a line item for both of them.
You want to split it down based on a vote that council hasn't taken on a contract that is forthcoming. So that's fine if you want to do that. It doesn't make any sense. Why would we make that line of demarcation right now?
Well, my fear is it says lobby, so it could be federal or state, it could be just federal, it could be just state.
Right, it's up to
But
the
when-
council.
Yes. So, but when we're talking about it right now, we're talking state and federal.
No, what we have done is we have said anecdotally that in terms of actual law, anecdotally, what we've said is that we want to allocate a certain amount of funds for lobbyists. We have discussed from our visioning retreat and multiple times that the first lobbyist came in at a particular number and there was additional funds available and we thought it made sense to pursue a state level lobbyist at that time. And so that's what we've been working on
Who's
from
we?
the beginning.
I don't think the council voted on that, but that was what happened.
I had no idea. I was always under the assumption, and you can roll your eyes, but the truth is, I was always under the assumption it was gonna be federal and it was gonna be state, and now you're saying otherwise.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay, then I'd love for you to repeat that.
Councilmember Tobias.
Yes, thank you. Just to add to that, when it comes to the dollar amount, are we looking at it just a $300,000 with no amendments later on? Do you think it's going to be at that cap? Do you have an idea that, let's say it does get approved with 300,000? Are we going to come back in February and say we need to amend this budget to increase this federal or state lobbyist funding throughout the year? Or is this going to be just the base salary we're looking at.
Right.
I've got constituents that are asking.
Sure.
And pretty much it could possibly pass. But at the same time, I want to make sure that we're not amending this later on to where, you know, we're going to need an additional 50 for travel, we're going to need an additional 10,000 for this, or it could be even less, which could benefit in the end. It's just, those are the questions that I've been asked.
Sure.
Thank you.
Scott Sellers for the record. So, council, it is based on scope predominantly. So, you know, council is establishing a budget by which we will then negotiate with firms to establish a scope that fits within the budget. So, assuming the federal lobbyist, and you do have a proposal in front of you, you know, with a potential scope. Like the mayor said, that still has to be voted on. Maybe the council doesn't agree with the scope. We can revise it as needed. That relieves a certain number, you know, 300 minus whatever the council approves for a state lobbyist. If the scope is acceptable to the council, that fits in that dollar amount, in that delta amount, then that's what we would bring forward for approval. If the council sees that state scope, and the question has been, what is the scope? I don't know. I sent council an email maybe a month ago stating what I thought the scope could be because of what other cities have done with state lobbyists. Personally, I've not worked with a state lobbyist before, so I'm going to find this process interesting to define that scope. But we will negotiate based on the budget that's available and put that scope in front of council. If the council wants to increase the budget amount, increase the scope, and feels that there's value to that, then we'll bring that forward for a budget amendment. Most likely that would not be the case. You know, we'll have a certain dollar amount. We'll tell the state lobbying firm, you know, to provide a scope that's reasonable and something that is within our budget. Thank you. Welcome.
I think there's a motion.
The motion isn't for an amount. Well, it's for an amount that hasn't been publicly disclosed, so you're going to have to amend the motion to give more clear direction. They can't follow the motion you made.
All right, I'll figure out the numbers. Before I figure out the numbers, I am going to need to discuss the fee proposal, so I can make sure that these are accurate. And the Aiken and Gump fee proposal, there's a travel budget of $3,500 to $4,000 per quarter in order to provide travel for leaders to the city to travel to Washington. On page 2 of the introduction of the same proposal, it states, "It was a pleasure to meet the team representing the city of Kyle, including Mayor Travis Mitchell, Mayor Pro Tem Rick Coach, and City Manager Scott Sellers in Washington, D.C. Can you please provide the total cost the city paid for this trip to Washington, D.C. to ensure Aiken and Gump provided an accurate travel estimate?"
Was that a question? I'm sorry.
Yes, the question, if you'd like me to repeat it, is, could you please provide the total cost the city paid for the trip to Washington, D.C. to ensure Aiken and Gump provided an accurate travel estimate? If we're going to figure out how much it's going to cost for us to have a federal lobbyist, I think this is important.
I don't have the total, if you're asking me what that total
Well,
is.
you know we don't have an answer to give you, so you made your statement. I mean, we can,
Perez, is there any way you can look that information up?
No, ma'am, it'll take some time to gather up the information and the actual receipts.
Okay. And please feel free to correct me if the city did not pay for that trip.
Is that a question? Did the city
No,
pay for that trip?
I'm just saying if there's a correction that needs to be made, please do that. So can we say with certainty $3,500 to $4,000 per quarter is enough? I just need to know if the fee proposal on here is correct, so that way we can break it down to two separate.
Right, the proposal given is a maximum amount.
Okay.
So it should not exceed that $4,000 per quarter.
Okay, so I'm gonna do the 156, which is the 12 times 13,000, plus the 4,000 per quarter, which is 4, 8, 12, 16. So 172 for federal. So do we subtract that out of the 300,000? I don't have a calculator.
128.
Thank you. So, yes, so my motion would be then to break down the two line items, one for state and one for federal lobbyists, with the federal lobbyist at 172,000 and the state for 128,000.
Second.
All right, so that's a restated motion and clarified with the numbers, and seconded by Councilmember Ellison. Is there any discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. Motion carries 5-2. All right. That was a fun start. Anybody else have anything they want to propose?
I do have another question.
We'll let anyone else who wants to go first.
Sure.
Go first.
I'll wait
If
on
you
that.
want to wait, you'll get to go as long as you want. Councilmember Tobias.
Yes, thank you. Maybe I brought this up during the workshop. Do we have anything lined up? I know it's kind of late in the game to be asking for things, but do we have anything that we have set aside for any kind of emergency funding for, in case we have another incident where we need to be able to provide water for the city, as far as bottled water or contracts that I think we've talked about before? Anything that we've looked at or I might have missed? I know with everything that's going on right now with COVID and the Delta variant, if, for knocking on wood, any reason that we have to go into another emergency response, would we have any funds available to provide city staff with masks or hand sanitizers, or were we looking towards that if we get even worse as we're starting getting into the winter or fall season? Will we be able to have funding to be able to provide our staff and residents that come into City Hall, or if we need to distribute it out, do we have anything in place? Thank you.
Scott Sellers for the record. We have an emergency management coordinator in the budget, and that position is to help us not only draft our own emergency management plan, but also to procure commodities from the state. So in the event of another disaster, we will have access to those commodities, but as Snowvid taught us, sometimes that access is limited based on the demand of the whole state. So per the plan that is drafted, there may be the ability to pre-stock some of those commodities like water or other supplies. Right now, Hays County does have some of those stocked up. They had extra pallets of water and extra supplies, extra masks. I know we have retained some commodities, but not nearly enough to supply the community. But the lesson learned, the big lesson learned, was that we needed our own emergency management coordinator, and that is in the budget, sir.
Something that really pushed forward.
Absolutely. You got it.
Anyone else have any items or thoughts? Councilmember Flores-Kell.
Thank you. I guess I have a question regarding what the city's plan is going to be if either Senate Bill 33 or House Bill 77 gets passed. Will there be a backup plan for what we're going to do with lobbyists?
And those were the anti-lobbying bills from this last session?
Correct. Well, no, it's not from the last, it's from the current. Last one was SB 10. These are HB 77 and SB 33.
Do you want me to answer that? It's more of a policy question, but
I mean, has
Well,
there?
it's not, it wouldn't impact the federal lobbyists, obviously. The state lobbyists, it might, so.
So how does it bypass the federal lobbyists, I guess is my question. 'Cause I think it's for all lobbyists.
Senate bills you're referencing are state laws. Federal lobbyists lobbies at the federal level. So the state can't tell us whether we can or cannot lobby at the federal level.
Gotcha, okay. Okay, well then, I guess with that said, I'd like to make a motion to delete the state lobbyist and allot $60,000 of that amount to contract a grant writer, as well as allot $30,000 to the fire department, and allocate the rest to the general fund.
Wait, making a motion on something that we already voted on last time?
Yes, we can.
There's a motion on the floor. I didn't hear it all, but is there a second on that motion?
Second, so we can discuss this.
Yeah. All right, you're going to have to repeat the motion so that we're all clear on
Sure.
it.
All right, so I'd like to make a motion to delete, I originally had the federal lobbyist, but since, due to the House and the Senate bill that's there, however, since we might be able to do the federal, we might as well stick with them. So make a motion to delete the federal lobbyist and allot $60,000 of that to contract a grant writer.
I think you meant state. You just said federal.
Oh,
Delete
sorry,
federal,
yes,
if you wanna
I'm sorry.
throw
Let me
it.
go back and redo that again. Make a motion to delete the state lobbyist and allot $60,000 of that amount to contract a grant writer, as well as allot $30,000 to the fire department, and allocate the rest to the general fund.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion?
So what were those, you said it was House Bill 33
Yes, there's two of them. There's
and Senate Bill,
SB 33, so that's the Senate, and the House Bill 77, and they read exactly the same.
Councilor Tobias.
Would you mind refreshing my memory on those two bills for me, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, so section 556.0056, that's House Senate Bill 33, restriction on use of public funds by political subdivisions for lobbying activities. A political subdivision may not spend public funds to hire an individual required to register as a lobbyist under Chapter 305 for the purpose of lobbying member of the legislature, or to pay a nonprofit state association or an organization that primarily represents political subdivisions and hires or contract with individual required to register as a lobbyist under Chapter 305. So there is an injunctive relief, if this should go through, there is an injunctive relief, and what concerns me is subsection B, which states that if a taxpayer or resident who prevails in an action under subsection B is entitled to recover from the political subdivision the taxpayers or residents' reasonable attorney's fees and costs incurred in bringing the action. So that means the city would have to pay for the attorney of any resident that sued and won.
Is there any further discussion?
I mean, so we voted to keep the state lobbyist last workshop session with a roll call vote.
and we can vote again on those things.
Okay.
Correct, staff? I mean, staff needs to step in here and educate us and make sure all of the council is on the same page. We can vote and change anything, even if it's already been voted on, correct, Scott?
Yeah, the last vote was just to keep it in the budget until final reading.
Right.
So at this point, this would be your final action to either leave or remove that item.
Could someone that voted against it bring it forward?
Yes.
Okay.
Because
okay.
the motion was really just to keep it in the budget for this next meeting. for
Okay,
final
sorry,
reading.
because I remember an item when I first did council, wasn't able to bring it back because I voted no on the item, wasn't able to bring it, so, okay.
All right, any further discussion?
So this is a little different than an agenda item that was voted on by council and moving forward throughout the budget process, correct, Scott?
The motion was, at the last meeting, what we usually do is council puts a motion and votes on whether or not to,
So it's essentially the same vote.
Keeps-
I mean,
Yeah,
I can
it's
explain
the
it. It's
same,
in the
right.
rules. This is all governed by the rules of council. The rules
Well,
of
I would
coun-
like Scott to explain it, and then I would like for Scott's response on, I know he said it was a policy thing, but just kind of lay out what would happen if the state legislature changed the law where we couldn't allocate funding to a state, for a state lobbyist, what would be the process there? What would happen according to the budget? Just so we're all on the same page and understand what's going on. I think that's not just a policy thing, that is certainly something that Mr. Sellers can speak on.
Scott Sellers for the record. So to answer the first question, the council can make as many amendments and vote on those amendments until the final reading. So the official action on the budget will come here on item 4 and 5. The second question, just so I'm clear, you're asking me on my opinion on the policy directive of the House and Senate bill? Can you rephrase?
No, so the question was asked earlier and the mayor answered, because you asked him if he wanted to take it, because it's more of a policy thing. But there is procedures here and there's a process. So if the council votes to approve funding for a state lobbyist, and then the state legislature changes the law that cannot be allowed, what would be the process from there that the council could do or not do? What happens to the budget? Do the funds go back to the general fund? Explain to the council so we can all be on the same page what happens in that instance.
Sure. So the funds would remain in the budget appropriated for that use. The council could do a budget amendment at any point throughout the next fiscal year to reappropriate those funds to a desired use of council. So similar to the vote or the motion that's on the floor now, that could come officially at any point during the fiscal year to reappropriate $128,000 to any general fund related or eligible expenditure.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So to clarify, if the law changes, we'll adjust to the law changing.
That's
Won't appropriate
correct.
the funds. Okay.
Or the funds can just remain in that line item. Similarly, the council could change the scope on the federal lobbyist side, for example.
We can't tonight because this
Or you
is a
could
budget
tonight.
meeting.
That's correct.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote.
So what is this vote? To remove?
It's her added number.
So an aye is to remove.
The I is to remove $128,000 and to reappropriate it in the way mentioned. Correct.
Are we ready? Yeah. Mitchell,
Nay.
Ellison,
Aye.
Flores Kale,
Yes.
Bradshaw,
Nay.
Tobias. Coach,
Nay.
Rizzo.
Nay.
All right, motion fails, 3-4. Any non-lobbyist related items we'd like to discuss?
It's so much fun to talk about the lobbyists, though. I do have something, it will pertain to the lobbyists, so if we want to get off that, I'll ask my question of, this is of staff. Is Paige available tonight?
No, sir, she is not here.
Okay, so then I'm going to rely heavily on you, Scott.
Okay.
So, here we go. So I just want to be in accordance to conducting myself appropriately as a council member. And so this is the purpose of this line of questioning to you, Scott, and I was going to ask Paige too if she was available tonight, to provide me clarification so I know how to conduct myself going forward as an elected official in this city. So the last couple of budget work sessions, there was a public comment about me doing inappropriate actions by bringing forward an idea to the task force, and based on our feedback that we received from doing the various different things of input that we were doing, and that perhaps that I conducted myself inappropriately. So if if I could have your professional response, Scott, if I was in violation of anything by doing what I did. And if so, if you could explain that and then explain what would be the appropriate way to have conducted myself in bringing forward that item.
Do you mind clarifying which task force,
So this is the Prop F task force. So I'll just give a real quick feedback or a real quick summary of it. So on the second May meeting that we had, the council
Look, I'm sorry, this is not
designated
relevant
a
to a
task
budget
force.
workshop. So, I mean, the item on the agenda calls for us to discuss the budget. What does this have to do with the budget? Other than, I mean, what are you after here?
I'm getting to that, if you would allow me to. But
Your comments are out of order. They're not related to the budget.
they will be related to the budget because it was about bringing a budget amendment.
Well, that is an unfair question to ask the city manager. It is not right to put him in that spot, to ask him to answer for a word that came out of my mouth.
Well, I would ask the city attorney if she was available on how to appropriately bring a budget amendment or suggestion to the council. So it is budget related.
If you'd like me to expound on what I meant when I said that I thought it was inappropriate, I will, but that is not what this meeting is for. There are a lot
Okay.
of people
We'll-
here. We need to discuss the budget. Whether it was
We'll-
inappropriate or not, the
we'll take
votes
it
were
up on
made
a
and they were
different-
made again just now. So
Yes, sir, we can take it up on a different agenda. Understood. I have no further comments on this budget.
all right, I make a motion to approve.
Second?
Moved by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Flores Kale. This is as it relates to the budget.
and with the amendment from,
Line item.
I'd like to
one
amend
under-
my motion to include the three items. One is to increase the FTEs for the Victim Services Coordinator position by one. One is to increase by $18,616.88 from the general fund and an amount in this year's budget for that Victims Coordinator position. And one is to accept a $45,000 grant did I say all that right?
Yes, sir, that's
That's the motion, or that's the
need a
amendment.
roll call vote on both items,
Okay.
tax rate and the budget.
So sorry, I need a second on that. I'm motion to amend.
Second.
Okay. So the first vote, we'll take an audible vote because it's just on the amendment, and then the original item will be back before us. So all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed. Motion carries 7-0. And now we need a roll call vote. This is the budget.
for the budget. Yep.
Rizzo,
So we have a second, we have a motion and a second before the vote call on agenda item number 4.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'd just like to say one thing before we vote on it. Certainly, this has been a challenging budget process. I certainly want to thank staff for everything that they've done. Every department, I'm not going to try to go through all of them, but every department worked really hard on this budget. And the directors, and trying to find out the best ways to continue the mission forward, continue the level of service that we provide to our residents, and increasing that upon the expectations, as well as the expectations of this council. And so it is a challenging process. It takes a lot of hours lot of mental capacity to put this together, and I just want to publicly thank our staff for all their hard work on this. Certainly, I will probably pretty clear, I'm not thrilled about everything in this budget, but there are some things that I'm extremely happy about and extremely just enthusiastic about moving forward with a lot of the initiatives that we put forward. As we mentioned before, nearly 70% of our budget is allocated towards capital improvement projects, improving our infrastructure and other assets that we have throughout the city. This is the third year in a row, at least that I recall, that it's been over 60% of our budget allocated towards that. So this council and past councils have consistently made an effort to allocate funding to improving our infrastructure, whether that be our roads, underground utilities, and various different things like that. And so I want to applaud the council for continuing that effort and continuing to stay steadfast with that. So with that being said, as I mentioned before, sometimes you don't always get everything that you want, but that's the part of this and working as a group and trying to figure out various different things. So I certainly appreciate this process and appreciate staff even adding an additional work session. I appreciate that our citizens that came and spoke this evening. Would have definitely loved to have heard from you in one of the earlier budget work sessions, but nonetheless, it's still important for us to hear what you all have to say and for us to be mindful of those things. And I certainly appreciate both residents coming forward this evening and making their statements. So with that being said, I've looked through this and I feel like I can go forward with supporting this budget.
Okay, anyone else? Roll call vote.
Rizzo,
Aye.
Bradshaw. Ellison,
Aye.
Tobias.
Aye.
Coach,
Aye.
Flores Kale,
Yes.
Mitchell,
Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Next up, second reading, approve an ordinance of the City of Kyle, Texas, fixing the ad valorem tax property rate for fiscal year 2021, or for tax year 2021, fiscal year 2021, 2022, at .5082 per $100 assessed valuation. Mr. Sellers.
Mayor, no additional comment than what's already been discussed.
Any discussion on the tax rate? Councilor Tobias.
Okay. Just to clarify, when we're talking about the tax value, we're lowering it in a sense. But the big question is, just like we had public comment about the property values going up. Are those two separate issues? Is that a city issue or is that a real estate issue, in a sense?
Right. So I'm going to provide a technical answer because, again, it's a kind of a policy type question, but the appraisals throughout the city have increased, and that is a separate entity. That's a county entity that establishes those assessed valuations throughout the city. As the city collective taxable assessed value continues to rise, then the amount paid in ad valorem taxes does increase based on those appreciated values. So that is an issue. That is not a city issue. I guess conceptually, it is a city issue because we do, we are part of the growing city, and the initiatives the council puts forward are intended to grow the city in the best way possible. The city council then sets a tax rate based on the budget, based on the debt service that needs to be paid for within the budget and the operating expenses and service delivery. That tax rate has been lowered by 2 cents in this budget proposal. So the city council is lowering its tax rate. The amount paid by the citizenry, or we'll call it, any entity that pays those property taxes, is paid based on the assessed valuation of their property. So if that increases by the appraisal district, then the tax paid does increase.
Can you confirm that the city does not control the land value?
I can
and
confirm
the-
that.
And the housing, okay, yeah, because my heart went out to her, because I think as a homeowner here in Kyle, I know, like, my taxes are going up just the same as everybody else's, but we, as a city, do not control the value of your land or the value of your home.
Yeah,
With
the
that said, though,
appraisal
we do control the homestead, and I don't know, is that something that we can look at to increase? I don't know how that works, and maybe not this time, but next time, because I do understand the hurt from increased home values, which consistently has been going up for the last 3 to 4 years.
I think as a council, it's something that we should investigate and maybe bring forward next budget year. As property values go up, we've got a lot of citizens that have been here a long time. We hate to push people out. That's the last thing that our intent is, and that's not what we're doing here. We don't control that part of the entity. That's people moving here. Kyle's a great city. People, that secret's out. People are moving here, and unfortunately, we don't own all the land here. Landowners can do what they want with their land when it comes to selling it. Very little things that we can control now, but one thing we can look at as a council is maybe looking at a homestead exemption, maybe adding to it a little bit more, something we could look at throughout the year and bring it forward next year. I'm open to something like that. The other thing I'd say is always make sure you look at what you're being charged. Look at the different entities that are charging you. If you see there's something that's amiss, always look forward and set up an appointment to contest your taxes as well. I mean, there's a lot of avenues out there that can help you, a lot of resources, so I encourage everyone to pay attention and always, look at that statement when it comes in.
Yeah, the final statement I would just say, just from an educational standpoint, is there are a variety of entities that make up the combined tax rate, and the city of Kyle is one of many. The tax burden based on this tax rate will be roughly 19% of the total taxes paid. So that's this, again, less than 20% of all taxes paid by a landowner would go to the city of Kyle for roads, service delivery, police, et cetera.
And our rate, so last year we decreased it by 2%, correct?
Correct.
Pervez, and now it's getting decreased again. So you're absolutely right. I just want to hammer down on that point that we're one of, I believe, 9 entities that make up your tax bill. There's the county, there's the school district, ACC, the 3 ESDs, and some other smaller ones. And so the slice of the pie, we're taking a smaller slice of that from even what we did last year as far as the percentage rate, correct?
Councilmember, I'm not aware of how the other entities are handling their tax rates for this year, but historically that has been accurate.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for breaking that down, Scott. And certainly, and then I guess the other question I was going to ask, what authority would the city have and what kind of leeway would we have? I think it's an interesting discussion to talk about the homestead exemption. What opportunities could you give us something very briefly of what the ability of the city government can do when it comes to that?
Yeah. Councilmember, it's a great question, and it's one that we can all probably speak very dangerously to, but not as authoritatively on tonight. So we can come back with that answer.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Do we have a motion already on the table? Motion to approve?
Second.
It's been moved by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Flores Kale. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call vote.
Ellison,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Coach,
Aye.
Rizzo,
Aye.
Flores Kale,
Yes.
Bradshaw. Aye. Tobias.
Motion carries 7-0. Do we have an executive session?
We don't.
Motion to adjourn.